Yeah, I just don't want to get like too loud because my daughter's sleeping. So I guess this will
I mean,
zone even better.
are you gonna scream?
No, I don't plan on streaming. I might. You never know.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Portable Trevor here, and today I have a very special guest. He's a coworker of mine, and he's got a bunch of crazy stories to tell. His name is Will Russo. What's going on, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on your show here. I feel honored to be asked to be a guest on here.
Yeah, man. So I've not really talked about this much on the show, but my um, believe it or not, this is not my job. I'm doing this for fun. And so what I do during the day and what Will does during the day is we work at this place called DDP Yoga. And if you thought it stood for something, you would be correct. It stands for Diamond Dallas Page Yoga. And Will, can you tell me more about this magical place called
Oh
DDP
man.
Yoga?
Well, I guess I've been there longer than you because you're still
Mhm.
kind of new. I've been there a little over, man, I'm losing track of time, like 2 years now.
Mhm.
But I mean, I was familiar with Dallas because obviously my dad, if we could get into that, but my dad kind of was in the wrestling business. He worked for WCW when Dallas was like, I don't know if it was when he was champion, but it was somewhere around that time. So he was familiar with Dallas, and Dallas knew my dad and all that good stuff. So
Mhm.
basically, long story short, I reached out to Dallas maybe about like a year or so ago before he called me back, and then he emails me out of the blue one day, and he's just like, "Bro, do you edit?" And I was like, "You know what? Actually, I don't." At the time, I was a producer for a nonprofit broadcast network in Atlanta, so I wasn't really
Mhm.
editing. I was script writing and hosting and producing shows. But anyway, I just wanted a new job, so I was like, "Sure, I edit, but I'm not the best." I probably shouldn't have said that, but I was just being honest with him. And he's like, "All right, come on down. We're looking for an editor." So I basically sat down with him. I had an interview there on the spot. He was an amazing dude. So was Steve, our other boss there. And I started like the next week, and I just started kind of from the ground up. I had worked in post production before, so it wasn't like editing was foreign to me or anything like that, or video production was foreign to me. But yeah, I started. They kind of threw me to the wolves, and I kind of got a taste of the company and DDP Yoga. And I guess it's, I guess you asked me like, what is DDP Yoga? I don't know
No,
if
I
I
definitely wanted to know how you got
gave a
there because I've never
long-winded
heard the
answer.
story. No, you're good.
Yeah. So yeah, I just started doing like, I don't know what I started, probably testimonial stuff and filming workouts and getting used to how they edit their videos and tell people's stories. So yeah, I've edited a lot of pieces since then, and I've learned more about Dallas and more about the people we help because I had no idea what DDP Yoga was doing. I had never done the workout before. Now I do the workout like a few times a week, so I have a good sense of it and a good sense of the community that has sprung up from it. So it's a really cool, really positive place to work at, and it's definitely sharpened my editing skills for sure.
I think it's hilarious that you said I'm not really that good, and Dallas was still like, "Okay, I want you to come in here, bro." So,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I guess like
so,
it's a tip
uh,
not to say that because you're always supposed to like lie. I guess I was
mhm,
just like, you know what? I'm just going to tell him the truth. So, but he was okay with it. I guess he was okay with me learning on the spot, and I'm glad he took a chance on me.
that's cool. I always, whenever I've tried to get jobs in the past, I've tried to ride that line between like overselling myself and also being
Yeah.
honest. So
Right.
like, I don't want because I'm not an After Effects guy. I don't want people to be like, "Oh yeah, Trevor's so great. He can do anything. He can do like all these crazy graphics and have like freaking TIE fighters fly in and shoot us or something like that." And I'm like, I can't do that. Let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
But you
Well,
came from like a producing and a writing background, so that must have helped a little bit, right?
yeah, it definitely was a costume, and I used to work for TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, as a PA. So I did that for about a year. So that was kind of my first foray into video production, like right out
Mhm.
of college, my first real job. I did some editing there. I never really edited on my own. I never really like had access to all the equipment I kind of have now. I have Adobe at home, which I'm
Mhm.
fortunate. But what was the question initially? Taking a chance on me?
No, like I was just asking, you came from like a producing background,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
like editing should have been a little easier for you, right? Instead of
Yeah, editing,
just
it
going
always,
into it blind.
yeah, I was aware of it. And the place I worked at before, like I did a little, like I used to have to write out the scripts. And it was the
Mhm.
most cumbersome way of doing things because, like, I feel like it would have been so much easier to go in there and just edit the material because like we produced all the footage. I interviewed people. I knew where like all the B-roll was shot. I just had a videographer come out and do that stuff with me. But at this company, for whatever reason, they wouldn't let like producers bleed into editors. Like editing was a completely different job description. Like you were an editor, videographer, you were like a tech. Producers were just producers. So like I became more familiar with like the act of finding stories and interviewing people and then writing the stories out. But I didn't get to do too much hands-on editing. But since I did a little bit at TNA, I was familiar with like Final Cut and I could do simple edits. But I've definitely upped my game since then.
That's awesome. Do you feel like you're a pretty good editor at this point?
I think I am. I just and I give total credit to people who are way better than me. So I think I'm better. I definitely have a lot to learn. Um, I just did a piece. I did Masterclass Bro. There's my little plug here where I did like a little parody of a Masterclass video I just put out. It's on my YouTube, William Russo at Willie Roo 42. It's on my Twitter and stuff. But that was like one of the first things I did where I feel like my editing, I could look back on it from like what I did probably like 2 or so years ago. And now I'm like, okay, that's much better. And like, I could, I'm sure like you, I could fly around the keyboard and kind of know what the shortcuts are and stuff like that. So I think I'm cool, but I definitely still got a lot to learn.
Right. And I feel like that's everyone. And especially with me, whenever I look back and even stuff I did like a year ago, I'm like, man, why did I make that? I could do so
Yeah.
much better. And it's crazy. Like ever since I moved here to Atlanta, my skills have just like skyrocketed. Like I've made more stuff than I have in my entire life.
It's awesome.
And yeah, like literally, so I moved to Atlanta last year, and just within like the year span, I've made more films in 1 year than I have in my entire life. So,
Yeah. Well,
and
you
so,
showed me some of the stuff you did before you moved here, which is pretty funny.
do what?
Was that one video I watched of yours? Wasn't that before you moved here?
Yeah, I showed you the slam where my buddy Heath and I were in it, and we were talking about getting the Cat in the Hat. He gets mad
Yeah.
because I gave
Right.
him Space Jam,
Yeah.
and it's such a dumb concept. I showed Will, and he's just like, "This is the best thing ever, bro."
Yeah, no, I loved it. It was definitely right up my alley with the absurdism and the surrealism and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a good segue to talk about like because you're also a comedy writer. You do a lot of like sketches and stuff, and
Yeah.
me and you like I feel like we bonded over just absurdism in general. Like me and Will will be at work and we'll just see the stupidest stuff and we'll just laugh at it, and it's
Yeah.
just like nobody else would ever laugh at this except for me and Will.
You never know. You got to like test the waters at first before you're like, okay, he finds this funny too. He's all right, you know?
Yeah, but so what kind of other like pieces of comedy do you take inspiration from for your like sketches or anything that you write?
That's a good question. I think one of my earliest influences was definitely South Park. Like, and I think it still is. Probably, and I know those guys are probably fans of Monty Python and
Mhm.
and that kind of British humor and surrealism and stuff like that. But I think I take a lot comedy from guys like Mike Judge and Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who are just like, with like Office Space and Beavis and Butthead, where they're just able to see the mundane aspects of the world and kind of like the stupidity of many things, and they just kind of run with it. And of course, The Simpsons. I grew up, I was a huge Simpsons. I still am. I don't watch the newer seasons, but that was kind of like what led me to like love comedy and good writing. And of course, Saturday Night Live back in the, I guess, early 2000s now, and they had like Will Ferrell and Daryl Hammond and Chris Kattan and Tim Meadows. I remember watching those growing up, and I was like, this shit's really cool. So I think I gravitated towards that kind of style of comedy.
Dude, that's awesome. And I relate to a lot of those because a lot of that is my inspiration. Like I love taking things that are mundane or something that you would never laugh at and just point it out how stupid it is and be like, hey, this is funny. You should definitely you should find this funny with me.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like trying to be offensive or anything. Like and I've talked about this on the show before, but that video, the slam, literally the joke is My buddy Heath is obsessed with the movie The Cat in the Hat. He has like a million copies, and I give him Space Jam for Christmas, and he gets pissed at me because that would have been an extra copy for him.
Yeah. But I don't want to oversell myself because I also am a good fan of like a fart noise. So it's like you could add a fart noise to a video and I will crack up every time. So it's like a lot of my videos just stem from that. I feel like I just need to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I feel like we're allowed to like stretch our comedy legs a little bit at DDP Yoga. Like I was doing a cooking video that me and Will shot, and there's a part where Dallas says he like takes a bite and he's like, "It'll make your head explode," and I literally put in an explosion, and I was like, "Hey Will, is this okay?" And he was like, "Dude, that's great. Keep it in."
Well, yeah, no, I think guys our age have a sensibility for that. I don't want to speak for everybody, but like when I started working at DDP, I was in kind of I don't want to say mentor, but a guy who kind of showed me the ropes. He would let me do kind of like what I let you do, where he was like, edit your own video and throw in your own take and kind of just have fun with it. And I did something like that where I just added in some stupid clip of like a Pomeranian smiling for no reason. And he's just like, oh, I love that. That's great. I mean, I don't think it made the final cut, but he was a fan of that too. So.
Well, dude, that's cool. Like, and so another aspect that like kind of helped you get into this was your dad, and I don't want to talk about your dad the whole time. I know
It's all
a lot
good.
of people would love to hear it.
Sure.
But I feel like that also he also has like played a part into like like where you are as well. Am I right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I grew up, my dad actually owned a video store. And then when I was older, and when I was a teenager, he owned a CD warehouse, which has like CDs and DVDs. I don't know if you've ever been to one, but essentially like another video store. But not only that, but he was the guy that showed me like a lot of movies and a lot of like classic 70s comedies. And I feel like that had the subtle approach on me. It wasn't like I saw that stuff and I was like, oh my God, like I need to do this. It was just kind of like we bonded over watching movies and we bonded over like listening to music and stuff like that. And he was like a writer. He was a big head writer for WWE, WCW in 2000. That's like his big claim to fame. So I think I was always kind of interested and, he wanted to go to Hollywood and live that kind of life, but, he had a family, so it didn't turn out that way. But I think he kind of like wanted that for me to a degree. So I feel like I wasn't able in a way to like move out to LA and do that thing. But in my own way, I was able to like still make funny videos and kind of still get my voice out there. And definitely through the movies we'd watch together, it definitely was like, okay, I kind of want to do something in entertainment. I don't know what, but I definitely want to be like around this creative field.
Yeah, and for everyone watching that was just like, oh my God, his dad was a writer for WWE. Like, you just kind of skimmed over that, Will. So
yeah.
So what was that like growing up? And I imagine this was like mid 90s, something like that, when your dad was like a very prominent writer.
Yeah, it was. We lived in Connecticut because, WWE, I think their headquarters are still in Stamford, Connecticut. So we had moved to Connecticut because he started off as a magazine writer. So, at first, my dad would work a lot, long days and stuff. And I think it wasn't until he got a little bit higher up in the magazine. Like I remember a couple times that like I literally am in the magazine, like selling a t-shirt, like me and my brother when I was like 7 or 8 and my brother was like 5. So we're just sitting there like a bunch of yahoos with WWF shirts on. So like, there'd be something like that. And like, I remember another time I tell people all the time, I think I have the picture up on my Instagram too, of like, I dressed up as the Undertaker as a kid. Cause the idea for the photo shoot was like, it's the Undertaker, but he's 8 years old, but he looks exactly like the Undertaker. And I was the Undertaker. So like, we would do funny stuff like that. Like, as I was older, when wrestling became more popular, like in 98, 99, where it was kind of like up there with the ratings and stuff, when WCW and WWF were going neck and neck, I wasn't, a lot of my friends watched the shows. I wasn't like a huge fan. I'd watch them because they were like good. And, I knew my dad wrote it. So I was like, I'm going to tune in. I only went to like a handful of shows.
Wait, wrestling's fake?
Yeah. Disclaimer. I always got to say that. But like, I don't have these amazing stories. Like I went to Vince McMahon's house once when I was, when my dad was working there, and he's probably told the story a million times, but my sister was like, I don't know, at the time, she must've been 5 or something. basically she fell into the pool, Vince McMahon's pool, and my dad was, and imagine we're in Greenwich, Connecticut. There's all these rich yuppies with these suits, these business, guys. And so there's my dad with me, my brother and sister, and my mom, and my sister falls in the pool, and my dad jumps in the pool with all his clothes on to get her out of there. So it was always this kind of zany, weird outlier approach to things where,
oh my gosh,
I never got drunk with The Rock, and I don't have like too many of those crazy stories because I didn't go to the shows that often. But I remember being around his office and, met Vince McMahon and TNA. I have some funny stories if we want to go there, but it definitely was different because people always think like, oh, your dad, wrote wrestling, and not like my dad was like an accountant. So I guess it seems a little bit more colorful.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that's almost more magical. Like, I mean, I know you said you weren't a huge wrestling fan, but you knew the importance of these guys. So to be a kid and to like look at these freaking huge bodybuilders and like, these God among men, gods among men, and you're just goddesses. Like, whoa. Yeah. So like, what was it like seeing? You saw all the big guys. Right?
Yeah, I saw the big guys. I feel like I'm still like this too, because I feel like I was probably almost a little, I don't want to say awestruck. I'll use the word intimidated when I first met Dallas, even like 5 years ago. I don't know, like when I was younger, because I don't know if it has to do with that. No one's ever really phrased it that way, but like we would meet these wrestlers and stuff. And, you imagine I'm like 4 feet tall, and those guys are like, man, they're like giants. Mm-hmm. So I remember just being like really nervous and scared, like, just like, oh, don't say anything. And so, like, I didn't know how to act and stuff like that. And of course, my dad was totally used to it. But it wasn't like I looked up to them. It wasn't like, oh, I want to be like you. It was just more of like, oh, these guys are on TV and they're superstars and they're massive. Like it was more of kind of this like, holy shit, so.
Dude, that's rad. Like, do you have any like funny stories of like meeting any of these guys?
I'm trying to think of like what would be like a good story. I mean, I think one time with we've told this story before on other podcasts, but I don't know if you ever heard of the wrestler Conan.
I'm honestly not a huge wrestler.
Okay, so maybe somebody.
Like, unless they're not huge, then I probably don't know their name.
Yeah. So when my dad worked for TNA, I was a little bit older. They used to run all their shows like right on the lot of Universal Studios. Mm-hmm. So like every time that my dad would tape, not all the time, but maybe once every few months, I'd be like, hey, let me come down there with you, because my grandparents lived down there, and we'd make a weekend out of it. But also, the show tapings, you could literally walk into the next park for free, and you could like get on the rides before anybody else. You'd get like a pass or something. So I was like, this is fucking awesome. Could I curse on here? I'm sorry.
Mildly. Keep it PG-13.
Okay, I'll keep it PG-13. I'll try to. You might have to edit some stuff, but I'll try not to, really. So one of the wrestlers, he basically went backstage and he offered me a little of the Jimmy, a little Toki, whatever you want to call it. And so we did that, and my other friend was there as well. So it was the three of us did that. And I was probably like in my 20s. I don't want to make it sound like I was like 12 years old.
Yeah, I thought you were like 12, and I was like, oh no, Will.
Yeah, no. I guess I should date it a little bit better. When I worked for TNA, that was about 8 years ago. So, and it might have been a little bit before then. So I was like in my early 20s. So anyway, but we got to go on the rides. Like we got to go on the Mummy Returns, and we were with this wrestler, and we were stoned. So it was like so cool at that moment. Like, oh my God, I got to tell my buddies about this. Yeah, and now it's like pathetic. My dad's like, "Why did you give my son weed? You're a terrible influence."
That's hilarious. Did you ever like kind of gloat to your friends when you were a kid? Like, hey, look at me. This is my dad. Look who I get to hang out with.
This is my humble brag. I feel like I'm a very humble person, and like my friends would always oversell it. Like, your dad's Vince Russo, like, and I could have messed with them so much. I feel like a big joke I used to always say is like, I wish I could have like bet on wrestling matches with my friends, because my dad wrote the show, so I would have known who won. But like, I never did that.
You would have been a millionaire by now.
I would have been like, I would have had so many pogs, I would have had so many, like, it would have been amazing. But
pogs and beanie babies.
Beanie babies, of course. But
that's another stupid joke. So my buddy, I think he originated that. But one day I just walk into work and I just started like emphasizing my bees. And Will just like loses it, and he's like, "Dude,
Yeah.
keep doing it."
Very few times where like I get hysterical, and that was like one of them where I was like, "Whoa, what is this?"
It's like I showed you the Beatles for the first time.
We had the Beatles.
Beatles.
It was, dude. You're right. I still say the every day. I think I took a picture from when I was reading 1984 when they had Big Brother BB. So
I thought that was the book, but I was like, what is he reading? He's not reading War and Peace, is he?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. So yeah. Now we always have a good laugh with that. But yeah, I wouldn't really gloat to my friends or anything. I was just like, yeah, my dad's on TV. Yeah, it's pretty cool, you know.
Dude, that's cool. And I don't want to like get too far into the negatives. I know it's probably, but yeah, like so. Long story short, seems like Vince Russo is like one of the most hated people in all of wrestling.
Pretty much.
So for my listeners that aren't super into wrestling, can you tell that story of like kind of what happened? You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, man.
I think the long and short of it is, when he worked for WWF, and he basically jumped ship to WCW in early 2000, late 99. That's like why we moved to Georgia, and I still live in Atlanta. But he had moved to WCW, and WCW was kind of on its way down. Like Turner didn't want, I forgot what exactly it was. Like Turner didn't want wrestling. It was just, I don't know if you remember when AOL merged with Time Warner or whenever that big deal was. It was right around that.
I was like 5 years old. Like that was the oldest I was in the 90s.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it.
That tells you anything.
Context. But anyway, I think the network that WCW was on, they didn't really want wrestling on anymore. So they were basically, you know, it was just in the way Eric, and I don't want to say the wrong information here because someone will probably like write it up and crucify me. But the long and short of it is WCW was like kind of going out of business anyway. And my dad happened to get there, and he was really trying to steer the ship, and the ratings actually went up. But I think a lot of the hate my dad gets is because he's really into like swerves, and like he made David Arquette the champion, and David Arquette is just like an actor at the time. So it was just like he kind of made a mockery of the business, even though the ratings were high up. So I think my dad just gets really tied in, and like WCW went out of business like right before he left. And like now it's like he killed WCW and he killed the business because he has these stupid ideas of putting the title on David Arquette and having Judy Bagwell on a forklift. Like he has really stupid, quirky ideas. So 20 years later, people still hate him for that, which I find ridiculous.
That's insane. So
it's such
when you were a kid, like, did you understand, or did you like hear a lot of like, did any of your friends say anything to you, or was it like a couple years later you found out like how all that went down?
Well, it's funny with wrestling, you know, when it first went down. Okay, so when my dad worked for WWF, he was just a behind the scenes writer. When he worked on WCW, kind of like they wanted ratings, and he was like, you know what, F it, I'll put myself on the show. I'll do whatever it takes to get the ratings up. So my dad became an on-screen character, and on screen, if you ever watch his stuff, he's just like the New Yorker bro. And, you know, he's like, come at me, bro. He does, you know, he's the bad boy, but he can't wrestle because he's an everyman. And I think people, that was like when my friends were like, holy shit, your dad's on TV. Like, that's so cool. I mean, my buddies would call me up and tell me this and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. But I think wrestling fans really, they merged him with the character, and they didn't separate the two. So it's like he was this villain on screen, and like they just hated him. But in person, people are like so nice to him. I think wrestling fans have this thing, or internet trolls for that matter, where you could hide behind your keyboard and say whatever you want. But 9 times out of 10, if you met that person face to face, you probably would be scared or thinking about what you said. So he doesn't get, I think that's kind of like what it is.
And I don't even know your dad, but I wouldn't even mess with your dad. Just like looking at him, I feel like he would insult me and belittle me or something. Like just looking at him.
Well, he's from New York, so like he's been around the block. He doesn't really take crap from anybody, so he could hold his own.
I got you. Have you ever seen your dad get in like a crazy argument?
I mean, with me, we've been in a ton of them, but
oh man,
yeah. So I don't know, crazy arguments. I'm trying to think. I remember one time, we my grandfather lives in an old folks community. This is when I was
Hmm.
younger. And, this old guy was playing tennis with himself and he was throwing like a ball and he was hitting the tennis ball by himself. And I walked across, I was 7 or 8 or whatever, and I walked across the tennis court, little old me scurrying by, and this old guy was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Get off!" And my dad like went ballistic. like I'm sure like any parent would, but he was like, "You do not talk to my son that way. What the is wrong with you? Like you son of a—" And he chewed out the guy, and like it was amazing. But my dad is since he's a born again Christian, and I think he's kind of mellowed out, and he's a
Hmm.
grandfather now, so he's definitely mellowed out a ton. But when he was younger, he was pretty intense.
Dude, that's cool though. Like it,
Yeah.
I always look up to people that don't take crap from anything because
Oh yeah.
I just let people walk all over me usually. Like I need to get better about that. But dude, that's really cool. And since your dad, like people say he is one of the most hated people, and I remember you were talking about internet trolls, and I was assuming like he's also like gotten like death threats, and maybe even
Oh,
you
I,
have like how do you
I,
respond to those?
honestly, I have my own, what's the word? My own take on it. Where I recently got on. Well, I never got a death threat. Thank goodness. But my
Mm.
dad has gotten death threats from crazy fans, and one big wrestling personality who I'm not going to name here, but people know who I'm talking about who know wrestling. So like, it would always piss me off on a intrinsic level because if somebody was like, "Hey, I'm going to kill your parents because your dad wrote a TV." If anyone was going to say like, "Hey, I'm going to kill you because you wrote a television show 20 years ago," that's just insane. And this person has mental
For
issues.
real.
But I think it becomes personalized. Like if I said to you, "I'm going to harm your dad," then it becomes like, "F you, this is my family. You would hate me or we'd really get into it." But since getting on Twitter, I've had a couple people like basically because of my dad, they'll talk crap about me and make fun of me. And like, I won't say the vulgar words, but they'll call me like a loser and a waste of life and stuff like that. Like, how could that you're that scumbag son and stuff like that. But those are about 1% of the feedback I get, and like everybody else is super nice and super positive with the material I put out and super supportive of my dad. So I think for me, I just had to learn like, hey, these are like the faceless internet trolls that you really can't waste your a time of day towards, because it's like they probably have like 2 followers, and who the hell knows who they are, so just leave it
It
alone.
really is. It's never anyone with more than like
Yeah.
500 followers that says stuff like that. It's always people that are just these people are genuinely like a waste of space. Like they
Yeah.
don't have anything positive to say into the world, or
Yeah.
they just don't. I don't know that internet trolls like fascinate me because
Yeah.
I've never really been one. I've never felt obligated to go into a comment section, even if it's a video I genuinely hate, and be like, "You need to die and quit what you're doing." Like
Yeah.
that's
I
mind
know.
blowing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's weird, man. I mean, I've talked about this with other people on other podcasts too, where it's just like I don't know what that stems from in a person to
Mhm.
like have that much hate and anger to like, and they could do it blindly, I think, which is a big part too, because it's just like they could do it from the comfort of their own home, and they're never going to have to face up to the consequences. But to me and you and it's just it's pathetic, it's childish. It's like, who has the freaking time to do stuff like that?
Yeah, for real. So, um, you and your dad also have a show that you guys do, and I've
Yeah.
seen clips from it. You guys are actually pretty entertaining. Like,
Oh yeah. Thank you.
um, yeah, you guys have good banter between each other, and I guess that also stems from you guys knowing each other for your whole life.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, what do you guys like to talk about? Do you guys talk about wrestling? What is there a specific subject you guys tackle?
Yeah, it's called the Bro Show, Bro Show, Bro. It's on a
Bro,
Patreon,
show, bro.
patreon.com/ Russo TWC.
Mhm.
And to my knowledge, it's the only father and son podcast out there. There might be others, but I'm not aware of them. But we kind of just shoot the shit. We talk about right now. It's unfortunate, like with everyone else, we've kind of been home more, so we're not I'm not going to concerts and I'm not like out and about. He's not out and about, but typically we talk about, music, movies, television, just kind of the banter from the week. And we'll tell old stories of him busting my balls when I was a kid and funny stuff that he remembers of me and that I'm embarrassed when he brings up, but we'll bust each other's balls a little bit too.
Has he embarrassed you a lot on the podcast?
Not really. I mean, he used to embarrass me a lot when I was younger, but he actually did embarrass me one time on the show, but not too much.
Can you tell it?
Well, I think I wanted to put it in one of my son of Russo's, but my dad, okay, so he's been doing podcast, which is interesting because a lot of people probably don't have this kind of take on things, but my dad started a podcast, I want to say about 4 years ago. And for me, like, I'm a pretty sensitive person. Like, if someone makes fun of me, like, it's hard for me to just like take it in passing. Like, oh man, it really, like, I really sit with it and it drives me crazy. And like, I will say, like, I'm probably a more frugal man. I'm a little bit on the cheap side here and there. So my dad on the show would just constantly, I'd hear shows where he's like, bro, my son is the cheapest son of a bee, you ever know. He got me a gas card for my birthday, which I did. But like he would say stuff like that, like I'm cheap, and he'd make fun of like my ex-girlfriends. He's like, bro, that girl was ugly, bro. Like, what were you? So like,
Oh man.
stuff like that always is like, oh, you bastard, but it's all in good fun. And I've learned to just kind of laugh it off now.
That's funny. Also, can I say how ironic that it is that it's called the Bro Show Bro, and it's a father and son podcast?
Yeah.
And think it's like brothers.
Yeah, he says bro all the time, and I try.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I say it when I make fun of him, but I don't really say bro that much in my day to day.
Yeah, and you kind of did a parody of your dad in a way with the video you put out recently, where you say bro like 600 times, and you like do that thick New Yorker accent.
Oh yeah, bro. Yeah. I do a master class, bro. We're going to be talking about the mankind, bro. We're going to be talking about rock, bro. We're going to be talking about Stone Cold. Yeah, I had fun doing that video.
Yeah. So what was the process of making that?
Well, it's funny, man. I think since I worked at DDP, I don't want to get. I'm trying to like mainline what I'm say. The process of making it was kind of like learning to work with my tools there, where I know we have access to like a camera and mics. Like, don't tell anybody if they're watching this, but I use some gear from work. But I think the thought process is, I have a lot of thoughts, and my I don't know how you take notes. I don't know what your creative process is. Like, my phone is a mess. Like, I'm the worst at like writing ideas down. Like, I literally have probably like 250 notes on my phone that are just like germs of ideas. But anyway, I know the footage I put out there is kind of me making fun of my dad, because that's kind of like what I'm known for through him. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to play to that audience. So like, I've been seeing all these masterclass videos, everybody's probably seen them, like Ron Howard or David Lynch. They're always popping up on YouTube.
I want to know how that money, or how that company has any money left. Like, there's no way getting all those stars are cheap, and there's no way all those Instagram ads are cheap.
Oh yeah. There's, because I looked at one, like, it's like 3 years old. Like, the Ron Howard one is like 3 years old, and I'm like, this has been out for 3 years already. So maybe I'm dating
Really?
yeah, it's been out for a while.
Maybe they make it and they're like, all right, let's save some money and then advertise it.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, I was just like, you know what? Masterclass, making fun of my dad, bringing in like all the worst and best of ideas, and kind of devolving a masterclass into my dad just like cleaning up dog piss and, talking about his failed pretzel business. I just think that would be funny, and it would connect with people. And most importantly, the way I tend to think about my shoots now is like, what can I do that I could shoot this afternoon with nobody else but myself, and like get it out like in a week? So I'm very like economical that way. So like, it's aligned. I was able to get a camera, and then once I got rolling, I just kept editing it till I put it out.
Well, it's very funny, and I just think you're a really funny dude. I've thought that since I met you.
I appreciate that. I think you're a funny dude.
Dude, thanks. Like, I don't know, me and you like really hit it off when we met. I was just like, dude, this guy's so funny. And then we did the stupidest stuff. And then you showed me, I had never seen a Simpsons episode before.
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe you had never seen The Simpsons before, man.
Yeah, which one did? Oh yeah, Bart Sells a Soul.
Yeah, Bart Sells His Soul, which is a great episode.
Yeah, and I was wondering like why I was like, what's so great about this episode? Like everybody's just raving about it. And
Yeah,
you and Matt Dickstein were like, you need to watch this. And I watched it and it was great. It was super entertaining. And like it had a message at the end too that I just thought it was like really sweet. Like it's very funny. Like the whole premise is just awesome.
yeah.
But you know, Bart not wanting to sell his soul is just like I don't know, it was classic to me.
Well, yeah, their best episodes are the ones that are like super funny, but like have a really deep, heartfelt message where it's like Bart being the cynic is like, oh, you don't have a soul. That's bullshit. Or excuse me, that's BS. And then like Lisa's like, oh, are you so sure about that? And then Bart, who's like a skeptical, kind of becomes this believer, like, oh, maybe I have a soul. Like maybe there is a higher power here. So I think the show is not that sharp anymore, but in their heyday, they were able to be really funny and also tell these like really deep stories in like 22 minutes, which makes those episodes so endearing now.
Yeah, do you know why the new ones don't work compared to the old ones?
I just think the show's been, I don't know if the show's been around for forever. It's been
Mhm.
30 plus years. It's hard for anything to keep up that level for so long. But I also think they've exhausted almost every idea. I mean, they must have like close to 700 episodes and they're telling the same story over and over. And maybe they don't have that same crop of writers they had in their heyday. But I just think they've already told their best stories. They might have one or two left in the tank for like a finale, but a lot of the show now is just like, oh, I've seen this story before. It's like, oh, I know Homer and Marge are going to get back together by the end of the episode. Where earlier episodes, you actually would think like, oh, is Marge going to leave Homer this episode? Like he went too far this time. But I think like after seeing that played out a million times, you're like, no, nothing bad's going to happen. So
Mhm. I don't know if this counts, but I have seen the Simpsons movie, and this is a huge spoiler, but I do remember that part where Marge sends Homer the VHS tape of their wedding and
right,
says like this is she's like, no, this is really it, and
yeah,
that like really got me,
yeah.
and I was like, this is so sad. And I genuinely like didn't know. I was like, is this like it? Is this like a finale of The Simpsons? Because I had never watched an episode before. By the way, that movie is really funny. I did enjoy
It's a
it.
really good movie. I think they put a lot of love into that movie because they
Mhm.
knew it's maybe their only, and maybe it was like a combination of ideas they've had for a while. But yeah, that is a really good movie.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite episodes?
Oh man. Well, I
This is
love.
turning into a Simpsons
Yeah,
podcast.
it's fine. I haven't watched it in a while, but I mean, I always used to love King Size Homer. It's the episode where like Homer puts on like 300 pounds so he could gain disability, so he could work from home. So he has like a moo on. If you ever see like Homer like in a big fat floral dress, it's from that episode. That's a really funny one. Radioactive Man's a really funny one. These are all like season 6, 7. Radioactive Man is when they make a Radioactive Man movie, and Millhouse wants, Fallout Boy, the band Fallout Boy. That's from The Simpsons because Radioactive Man's sidekick was called Fallout Boy,
Mhm.
and all the kids in Springfield like auditioned for the role of Fallout Boy, and Millhouse gets it over Bart. So you kind of have them like bickering, and Bart getting jealous. And that, I don't know, that episode's really funny. But then there's ones like, like Homer meets Mel Gibson. Homer goes to New York, and one of my favorite episodes too. Me and my brother still quote it to this day. It's like the Simpsons 138th episode spectacular, and it's kind of like it's like a variety clip show in the middle of like season 6 or 7 where they do like a mock like best of reel, but it's all like some original footage, but it's like they make fun of the show within the show. And there's actually another episode like that where it's like Behind the Laughter, where they make fun of like Behind the Music, the VH1 show. So it's like that
Mhm.
meta commentary that I think's really funny. And I want to say it was almost like ahead of its time back then for them to do something like that. But those are definitely like a handful of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, when I've told people I've only seen a handful of the Simpsons episode, like they're like, "How dare you? You're really into comedy. Like why
Yeah,
can't how come you haven't watched it?" But I mean, I'll be honest, I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, which I'm not ashamed of, but
right.
in that like they didn't really let us watch like, The Simpsons or I didn't watch Family Guy until I was like in high school or something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up with a lot of, vulgar things.
I mean, The Simpsons is probably considered tame, like by today's
Yeah,
standards.
I watched when I watched Bart Sells a Soul, I was expecting like, like freaking F words and people having sex
Yeah.
like every other scene. But I was like, this is like genuinely a good cartoon, like even for
Yeah.
kids. Like I could see a kid watching this and being entertained.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's an age thing. I mean,
Mm,
I'm like in my early 30s, but like when I grew up, The Simpsons used to be on like every day at like 6 to 7. There'd be like that block on TV.
mm.
So that's how I kind of got accustomed to it and would watch it like, every day and whatnot.
And you're a huge 90s kids fan, or not 90s kids fan,
I
sorry, you're
love
just a
90s
huge
kids.
90s fan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of kids. Let's get this.
But I meant to say you're a huge 90s kid.
Yeah.
So like what was so great about the 90s, like because sometimes I'll walk into work and like Will's wearing like a Bart Simpson shirt or
Yeah,
just something like what's that one?
this is Rick and Morty.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's Ric Flair.
Nice.
Yeah.
Get it because his name's Rick.
Get it? Woo, woo, woo.
Well, what was so great about the 90s for you? It seems like you really enjoyed that because I mean, I only got to enjoy it because I was born in 94, so I only got to enjoy it for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So, but what was so magical about it?
I don't know. I mean, I think at the time you don't realize it's magical. I think a couple things I'll pinpoint in my childhood too were like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. I loved the Power Rangers, probably like a lot of other 90s kids. I loved like Toy Story. When Toy Story first came out, that like blew my mind that you could make a movie with computers. And Star
That's
Wars.
still one of my favorites. Toy Story is just I can watch Toy Story at least like 8 times a week and probably
I
be
know.
happy.
I know it's still not hated. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the 90s, I guess a lot of it was, I was younger. So it's a lot of that like nostalgia where it was like simpler. I was a kid and I could just watch TV all day. But I don't know, man. I think that's a good question. I think the characters, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they probably seem so stupid now, but for some
Mhm.
reason they have such an imprint on my childhood. I had all the toys and the shirts and I dressed up like them. And I don't know. I don't want to say it was like an innocent time because like what does that mean? But I just think the characters were really colorful and everything was kind of it was like remember Animaniacs was another show I remember and
That's one of
Batman.
my favorites.
Yeah, I just think it was everything was very colorful and vibrant and funny and entertaining. Where like once you had South Park and Beavis, and I'm even dating myself because this stuff is like 20 years old. That stuff came out at the end of the 90s and was like maybe like a little bit more cynical, like a little bit more like
Mm.
putting the mirror back on like how stupid things were getting for lack of a better thing. So I don't know, being a kid and just watching like Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that was just like the best thing in the world.
Yeah, I kind of, and I don't want to be a freaking boomer old man and be like, I had it better than you kids, but I'm genuinely like concerned because I've spent many hours like around a campfire or just like hanging around with my friends and for hours just being like, oh dude, you remember this? Like you remember that? And like what are kids gonna do in like
I know.
their 20s? Like there's just so much content now
Yeah,
and
it's
like
terrifying.
yeah, and there's thousands of TikToks being uploaded every day, and that's what kids quote now. They don't quote cartoons anymore. They're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, did you see this TikTok?" And I'm like, whenever you're older, you're gonna be like, "Hey, do you remember this TikTok?" TikTok, and your friend's gonna be like, "No." Do you remember this one? No.
Yeah.
It's gonna be that back and forth. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like that stuff is way, I don't know, like Simpsons is, if you're using that as a barometer, like, it was like a
Mm,
high rated show that was before cell phones really. So like
mm.
it would be on Fox on Sunday night. So like everybody kind of knew that show. But now with like TikTok, it's a little bit more esoteric, I would argue. It's maybe for people younger than us and just for people it's a little bit more insular, like, hey, I follow them. Like if you don't follow them, you might not find it funny, or you just might not get the humor. And I mean, or you just watch people dancing. I don't even know what the hell it is. I don't really watch TikTok, but that's a good point.
I watched some.
Yeah,
But yeah, like I'm not trying to hate on TikToks. Some of the funniest videos I've seen this year are from
well,
TikTok. Like it's actually pretty good. And
yeah,
I mean, some of it's super cringy, and I'm like, I don't get it. Maybe I'm too old for this. And some of the dances, it's literally like this.
Yeah, I
like
mean, I've seen
cheerleading moves.
stuff. I think the not to I don't know if this is the answer, but I think the kind of art, I'll use that term loosely, content that we make now. I was talking to Robert about this earlier. It's meant to be disposable, right? You could
Mm,
watch a 2 second clip on your phone and completely forget about it. Simpsons, like, to reference that again, like Bart sells your soul, like that stands kind of the test of time as like a really smart universal story. If like you're a human being, you've had to grapple with that idea of like, is there a God? Do I have a soul? So you could kind of go back to that, no matter how old you are. But if you're watching a video of somebody just dabbing for 5 minutes, I think you're going to forget about it 10 minutes later. And that's kind of the point because there's so much stuff out there. It's just you can't keep up with it.
yeah, I think I've forgotten about 90% of the social media content I consume today.
I mean, that's how
But
it's built. I mean, look at Twitter. Like every day you scroll down, like that comment that person made is gone. And it's just like, what did they say? It's weird.
yeah, but I guess like there are some popular things that kids are going to be able to like look back at. Like I love the Marvel films. Like if I see it like my grandkids and they're like still watching like Marvel movies or whatever,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna be like, hey, that's cool. Like I can talk about that too because I feel like that's just gonna carry on for many more years, something like
Mhm.
that. But I don't know. Like I see kids um like a couple I think like last year I was hanging out with I can't remember where I was, but I saw these kids, they were on their phones and they were just watching like TikTok videos, and I just was like, come on, please communicate. I feel like such a boomer right now.
Dude, I mean, I fall into that trap too, though. Like, I'm on my phone a lot. I think
Oh,
a
me
lot,
too.
a lot of people are probably on their phone now more than ever, just because we're all quarantined for still more or less. But I mean, I didn't get a cell phone till I was like 17 or 18 or like when my first year of college. So it was way older for me.
Yeah,
But
I was like 12 or something.
were you really?
Mm,
But I think I feel like I know what you mean, but at the same time, like I look at myself too, and I'm like, yeah, but dude, you're on the phone a lot too, and like you're a dad, like you shouldn't be on the phone. You're like an adult, but I realize like how powerful that having a phone is and those social media apps. It's like anybody could kind of get sucked into it.
and let me be clear, I'm not trying to say like I'm better than these kids or whatever,
No,
because like
no,
I
not
do the
at
same
all.
thing. I guess the point I'm trying to make is um I genuinely like seeing what kids like consume today. I don't see how they're going to be able to reminisce whenever they're older.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I
because
I think the same way, dude. I mean, it's a little different because, like, I mean, even growing up with streaming music, it's like what would music is if this is like an analogy I can make. Like growing up, you'd listen to the radio, right? Or you listen to like a record, or you'd go to the concert. But for me, a lot of my big memories are kind of like sitting in the car, like with my brother, with my friends, and we would like listen to a band like on a CD. Like it would be not even before streaming. So it's like I feel like little moments like that, for what they're worth, people aren't going to have at all anymore because you could stream anything, you could watch anything. You're not going to actually have like a physical CD you put in a CD player and listen to for 40 minutes. Like that sounds like anarchy.
yeah, and I definitely do not want to go back to the old way. Like, I love having unlimited everything. Like, you know, especially with like streaming movies, like YouTube videos, music, whatever. But um, and I've preached this so many times in my show, but I I love limitations,
Mm,
especially in like art, because um like and I'm not gonna go into it again, but the Thunderdome, like we get the challenge videos and we're like, these are the rules, make your thing. And what people are able to come up with is just it's just a beautiful thing. Like everybody has this limitation, everybody like knows what we're going through. And
yeah,
for music, like I remember you saved up your money and you bought like a CD. I remember I got Weezer's like first album, the Blue album, like on CD. That was like one of my, and I got Dookie. That was like two of my like first like CDs.
yeah,
And I remember listening to those songs like over and over and over.
yeah,
And now if I listen to the entire Dookie record, I'm like, cool. I don't need to listen to that for
yeah.
another month or two. But then I was like somehow cool with listening to the same songs over and over and like knowing every single word.
Yeah, no, that's a really true point, man. I think
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know the answer. It's just like there is so much of everything now that it's like you really have to discipline yourself to dial back almost.
Mhm. Do you what are some albums that you grew up with that maybe you don't like find yourself listening to them as much as you did?
Uh I don't know, like probably like Limp Bizkit, Significant Other. I'm trying to think of some other stuff around that time. I mean, Rough Riders,
Mhm.
DMX. I don't really listen to rap that much, but a lot of the music I grew up with, I actually still do listen to. Like, obviously, I love Green Day and Weezer, and I'll still listen to the Blue Album. But yeah, I still listen to like hard rock, like AC/DC and Metallica. Like, I could still put that stuff on and enjoy it. Like, I don't really have too many cringe stuff. Limp Bizkit keeps coming to my head because like I remember just having that CD, the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water, and I play it all the time, and it's just god awful.
Yeah, did you Fred Durst was in a commercial not too long ago. Did you see
Oh,
that?
I did see that.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it's like
gosh, that was so
a paint
funny.
commercial or something too.
Yeah, some dude like buys a car that only plays like it has a Limp Bizkit CD
Yeah,
stuck in it, and it like keeps playing it. And then Fred Durst like crosses the street, and he's just like,
yeah. It was playing.
it's like he's
Nook-
got to be aware. He's got to be
Oh
aware his
yeah.
music has not stood the test of time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he probably just got a nice little check to throw Nookie in there and just have fun with it.
Yeah. What are some albums you think like have stood the test of time? Like you're like, this is classic no matter when.
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks immediately comes to mind. Anything by Neil Young between like 1970 and like 1979, I could still listen to. I mean, the Beatles, obviously, of course. Weezer, Blue Album,
Mhm.
Dookie. I mean, it depends because there's so much music. I mean, what time period? But definitely those albums.
I think that's always been so fascinating to me. Like today, people call that evergreen content. That just means like you can
Right.
listen to it or watch it whenever, and it'll always like hold up. But there's so many things that are trendy that just will not stand the test of time. Like nobody's going to be doing like the dancing TikToks probably even a year from now. Everybody's going to be probably going to be like, "What are you doing? That's so cringy." But
Yeah.
now like,
Yeah.
that's cool, and it's the same thing. Like you probably like, saw like pictures of your parents whenever they were younger, and you were like, "You really wore that? You really had that haircut? That's freaking lame. Why would you have that now?"
Yeah.
And like our kids will probably say the same whenever we're older or whatever. But like that's always been a fascinating topic to me, like how things can just hold up after so many years.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the best art, right? Like
Mm,
it's just a lot of those guys created that stuff in their 20s too, which is pretty remarkable.
mhm.
But yeah, I think the best art is universal, and it kind of you could listen to it over and over and over, and depending on what's going on in your life too, you might have a different take on it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And Will, we're kind of coming in like on an hour, and but yeah, I kind of like wanted my guests to like mostly talk about themselves, and
Yeah.
but yeah, dude, like you're working at DDP Yoga, and you're a great music listener. Obviously, you got good taste, except for Limp Bizkit,
Yeah.
and you've also got. I'm just kidding. And you've also got like a wife and a daughter right now.
Hmm.
Tell me about your family, man. Do you
Oh,
has this time been hard for you guys?
it's been good. I mean, we're lucky her daycare is still open, so me and my
Mm,
wife are able to both work from home. So that's good. We actually, me and my cousin built a play set for my daughter, like like maybe for her first birthday. So we're able to go outside and play on that. So it has been good, but she's hitting that year and a half mark, and she's throwing some nasty temper tantrums here and
oh
there,
no.
but she's also the cutest thing in the world, and when she'll come up and like give me hugs, and when I come home, she'll run towards me, and it's just stuff like that obviously makes it awesome.
Oh yeah. I still haven't met your family.
Oh yeah, that's right, man. Well, you have to come
Yeah.
over sometime.
Yeah, totally. I think it's funny. Like this is um interactions like this are like why I wanted to start this show. Like
Hmm.
just like catching up with some friends, and I think I've seen you a couple times because of DDP yoga, and
Yeah,
we're social distancing, promise.
yeah.
Um, but I think this
That's
is
not
just like
true. I
such a
actually did.
wild time.
I saw you the other day, and I probably got closer to 6 feet to you.
Oh no, we got to get tested now.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, what um has your daughter like really enjoyed like having you and your wife like at home quite a bit, or has
I,
she like noticed that she's seen you guys more than
well,
usual?
it's still kind of the same because she's in daycare. It's
Mhm.
kind of weird where like in the morning, we usually have like a 30 minutes to an hour with her before we drop her off. But
Mhm.
like now she kind of wants to go to daycare because she wants to be around other kids. So
Oh,
like
that's nice.
it's cool that she's like recognizing other kids and they could play with her and stuff like that. But I think it's good like on the weekends, obviously she has like our undivided attention because it's not like me and my wife are going out anywhere. So as long as you can keep her busy and as long as you have Monsters University on, I think you'll be okay. I think we'll be
Is that her
okay.
favorite movie?
So currently that's her favorite movie. Yeah.
Nice. Guys, I had Will walk into my office before all this happened, of course, and he just like bursts in, and I'm like, "What's up, Will?" And he just goes, "Have you guys seen Frozen 2? Like, that's my favorite movie right now." And I was like, "What are you?"
I actually like don't like those movies, I think is my final statement on it. I'm very close to using the word hate. I don't hate them, but I just don't. I've seen them too many times.
I got you. I haven't seen Frozen 2 yet. Should I watch it?
It's awful. Don't watch.
Is it
Watch.
is
Watch
it
some.
actually bad, or is it just bad because you've seen it so many
No,
times?
it's actually. I'm like one of these people, right? Where like I'm not all the time swayed by reviews,
Mm.
but I initially saw Frozen 2 because I'd never seen it before, and that was like they put it on Disney Plus because it was like, here, guys, it's quarantine. Here's Frozen 2 for the kiddos. So that was like my first time watching it. And I was like, it's not great, but it's not terrible. So I'm like, okay, it's watchable. It does its job. Anyway, one of the bands I really like, the drummer like tweeted something the other day, and he's a father too, I guess. And he's just like, Frozen 2 is the biggest piece of crap I've ever seen. Like, it's such a dialed in movie. It's like, I'd rather watch anything else in the world. It's like, ever since I read that, I was just like, you know what? Frozen 2 isn't that good. Like, and it really isn't. Like, the
You were
story,
swayed.
I was swayed, but like the story doesn't match up. Like if you watch the first movie and you're like, oh, they took 7 years to make this sequel, and you're like, this is what this movie is about. This is stupid.
Mhm.
So yeah.
It's so hard to make a sequel. Like I can probably count on both my hands how many good sequels there are that I've seen.
Have you
Like
seen Blade Runner 2049?
yes, it's better than the original.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Like that's such a great
Spider-Man
one.
2.
Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero movies ever made.
Toy Story 2 is probably not better, but it is up there with Toy
Eh,
Story.
I don't think it's better than Toy Story, but I don't know. I guess we're not talking about, movies that are better than the original. I guess we're talking
Yeah,
about like good sequels.
good sequels.
Toy
Yeah,
Story 2, Terminator 2,
T2, of course. Back to the
T2.
Future 2,
Um, I don't know.
BTT2.
I don't really think Back to the Future 2 is really that good.
Oh, I hate you. This
The third one
conversation.
is definitely bad.
Yeah, the third one is the worst of the bunch.
Please don't kill me, Matt Dickstein. That's his favorite trilogy of all time.
Oh, dude, it's my favorite too. So you got two against
Really?
one here. Yeah,
Okay, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm just old
yeah.
because
You don't know
I
anything.
actually I didn't watch those movies until I was older.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was an adult when I first saw the first Back to the Future, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time now.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're a fan. You just don't really agree with the 2 and 3.
Yeah, pretty much. Like Back to the Future, I think it's brilliant. Like it's everything I want in a movie and more.
Which
Like
one?
it's
The first one?
yeah, the first one.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's just so fun and it's
It's
just a
so
good story.
yeah, it's so whimsical.
Yeah, that's what I want in a movie. Definitely that Steven Spielberg
You
vibe.
want that little whimsy in it, you know?
Yeah, totally. But Will, do you have anything else like you want to say before we close, man? I try to keep these close to an hour.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so first of all, I got to give a shout out to Robert Peake and Michaela, who are offended that they aren't on your show, and you asked me first.
They are.
No, I'm just kidding, man. But I'm glad you had me on your show. I feel honored to be on. Is the name of the show something, or is it just Portable Trevor?
Maybe you can help me think of something. I thought about like calling it like Talking Portable. I think
Okay,
that might be a good name. I
I
don't
like
know.
We could
Um,
brainstorm offline.
yeah, totally. And I like right now it's just called Portable Trevor's Twitch Talk Show.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on Portable Trevor's Twitch Talk Show. I hope people listen to this and find it enjoyable. But if you guys want to check out more of my stuff, I'm William Russo on YouTube. I just put up like my new master class. I have a bunch of album reviews and some music videos I shot and some original music. William Russo on YouTube and at WillieRoo42 on Twitter. And patreon.com/Russo TWC for the Bro Show Bro, which I do with my dad, Vince Russo. So if you want to actually hear some of his banter, you get a taste of that too.
No trolls, please.
No trolls. Yeah.
Do you ever you guys do it live, right?
Well, we actually, I edit it. So we do like the first 15 minutes live, but then I edit the rest of it.
I gotcha. So but yeah, thank you so much for being on, dude.
Yeah,
Would love to have you on again. Like this was some good conversation
yeah.
stuff.
I feel like we didn't even there's so much more we could talk about, but we got in everything, we needed. So it was good.
Yeah, dude. And I don't know, I might go over an hour in the future. We'll see. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Will. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a blessed day.
Why did you give my son weed? You're a terrible influence.